We're going to do 30 minutes of just, talking about listing process, like a little bit of the process of the presentation, what I did to take thousands of listings in 24 years. Listings are my jam. Like, I love the listing presentation. For the first 7 years of my career, I did listings, but I was mainly a buyer's agent. And then when I figured out from my mentor how to have a process, and like you guys heard from Emily today, the expireds, I was in the office every day doing my calls, and literally I was on listing appointments every day. And then I moved here in 2010, and then by 2013, I was selling 130 homes a year. The wheels were falling off, and I hired Laura Payne, who's still with us today, and she took all the buyers. And from there, I just stayed a listing agent from 2014 up until my last sale was probably 2022. I think I hung up the heels and no more showings. So that's been wonderful. I miss it though too, because sometimes I hear them on the phones and I'm like, oh, if I could just go out on a listing. And then I hear them after they get the listing and the complaints, and I'm like, no, I'm good. Because I was the, what are we? We're like the complaints department, right? We do customer complaints all day. That's what we do. So we're in the peopling business. So at the end, we'll give everyone a link. We'll throw it in our access group, but I'm going to give everybody our script book so you guys have that, and we will put that in our access group for our access members. So my idea of a presentation is not flipping through a book with your marketing stats and what your company does for you and all of that stuff. In fact, somebody from EXP called me yesterday and said, hey, can we have a copy of your listing presentation? I go, it would be me reciting words and asking you questions. I go, I don't have a presentation. And he's like, what do you mean you don't have a presentation? I'm like, well, we have like a seller book, but it's like the presentation is the words that I say. And so to me, I was always taught that your presentation is what you say, the things in a pretty book. So, so does everyone have paper and pen? Yeah, yeah. All right, so I'm going to give you my 5-step listing process of what I did in through the day when I went to a listing appointment. And then if you guys have questions, we'll hold for questions at the end of any part of the process. We can ask those there. But there was always a process to me because, again, it was in the office by 7:30 to 8. I was role playing 8 to 11. I was on the phones taking 10, 15-minute mindset breaks. My job was to do exactly what Emily did, get into my non-CRM CRM, which you guys heard was my index card file box. But I had all my scripts on a board in front of me. I had a mirror to make sure I was smiling when I was talking to clients, my calendar, and literally I was just trying to book appointments all morning long. And then at 11 o'clock, 11 to 11:30, I checked my email and then talked to anybody I needed to in the office. By 12 to 2, I had a 2-hour mindset break where I ate lunch. And then from 2 o'clock to 7 o'clock, I was in the car, rolling in at 7 p.m. typically at night. And so I lost a lot of kiddo time and sleepy time. And, that was a sacrifice. That's the mom guilt I get to live with today. But the results were that we got to build this wonderful organization. So it was definitely all worth it. My son doesn't remember, he said. So that's perfect. All right. So number 1 in the 5-step listing process is you're going to pre-qualify 100% of the people that you go out to see. So pre-qualify 100% of the people. Who pre-qualifies their sellers before they go out to their property? Like literally you have a stack of questions that you ask them. One person? Come on, there's got to be more. Okay. That to me was, it determined if they were serious or not. So I knew if they were serious. And it gave me, which was more important, their concerns and objections ahead of time. So if I'm going into a court case, I'm not going to go in blind. I want to do my research. I want to get everything I can to assess the situation and then devise a plan to launch. And so that was the same thing with a listing. Every seller is different. They have different motivation, different ideals, different personalities. Part of it was if I'm talking to a high D driver, I'm talking to an analytical, or I'm talking to an expressive, I know who I need to be when I show up at the door. So it gave me their concerns. It also demonstrates professionalism. Your listing presentation starts the first moment that you guys talk to a client. That is when it starts. It's that first time you literally open your mouth and blah, blah, blah. And then it gives you information for rapport building. So the pre-qualification script is a script that you guys will get in the script book, but it starts with asking them a series of questions so you can better determine how to help them. And literally that script is hey, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I'm going to come out tomorrow at 5. Do you mind if I ask a few questions? No, sure, go ahead. Well, you know, if what I say makes sense and you feel comfortable and confident that I can get your home sold, are you planning to go ahead and give me a key and allow me to bring buyers right away? Well, no. Okay, why not? Like, what am I going out there for? So usually they would say yes. Okay, great. Now I'm future pacing. I want this listing. I want to make sure that when I go out to this property, I'm not just going out to, you know, just basically meet them and give them decorating ideas. And before I used to not pre-qualify, and one of our top listing agents also didn't pre-qualify, I went out to numerous appointments, and I remember specifically this lady in Cary, and I showed up and we walked through the house and she's like, well, I'm gonna get it sold in about 8 years, but I wanna get all the painting done and renovate my I was literally there to give her painting recommendation. And it's like, well, that's nice, but that was a lot of time wasted. If I would have pre-qualified her, I probably wouldn't have gone out, and I would have gave her the name to our stager and said, here, call Elizabeth and she'll come out and I'll save my time. So number one, always pre-qualify. 2, you're gonna mail or email or deliver in person your pre-listing package. So a pre-listing package, if I'm interviewing 3 agents and 1 agent delivers a hand, you know, whatever your marketing brochures are in my hand the day before I'm gonna meet them, like that's a great step. So when I had no business or very little business, I would hand deliver it. When I had a lot of appointments, I would email it or have a courier. So we had a runner at our office. His name was Kevin. Where's Kevin? But he would run out to the appointment, so and drop it off for me. So in there, you're going to have a list of your personal references. So I had actual names and numbers of people that I worked with, because number one, they're never going to call. Very rarely do they call. But I would ask permission for 5 top people that were in my world. Hey, if I give my potential future clients your number, will you talk to them and give me a great review? That is powerful when you have, you know, Susie Smith and her phone number. Call her, I don't care. So you've got your list of references. Your plan of action. What are you gonna do to sell their home? So everyone's got a marketing plan. That's where you would add your marketing plan, your plan of action. So that goes in there. A copy of your track record, and if you're new, because we have somebody, you know, a few of you that have been licensed for a month or two, a copy of your company's track record. EXP is number 1 in the triangle. I know most of us in here are with that company. I always use that. We have 1,400 agents. So if I'm talking to a buyer or a seller, I'm saying, hey, I'm bringing you I'm gonna get you in front of the number 1 agency in town, and we have 1,400 agents. Not only that, those 1,400 agents use EXP exclusives, meaning we can find you off-market properties, because we do sell a lot, buy, sell, and trade off market. So if I'm working with a Sotheby's agent, they have 70 agents or 1,400, that landed us a $3.2 million listing in Linville because he didn't want to put it on MLS right away and he wanted to market it. Perfect, we have the solution for you. So we got that from a Sotheby's agent. A completed CMA with the suggested list price range. So I know this freaks you guys out, but it's like, I would go out to a property and I would put, you know, 500. So I would pick the number that I wanted, 500 to whatever it is, 525. My max I would list the home for. Now, sometimes you got a call from the seller and like, well, I told you I wanted 600. Okay, well then the price is the first thing that we're going to talk about, Mr. Seller. Anything else? Well, yeah, but I don't want to list it for 525 or 550. I get it, and we'll talk about it. Again, it's not my price. It's market price, and we'll talk about that. You're in charge at the end of the day. Your price or my price doesn't matter. I always use the term market price because they'll say, well, what's your price? I don't have a price. I'm just here to read the tea leaves. That's my job. So a completed net sheet. So you want your net sheet in there. And then a completed contract with all of your initials. I would even highlight all the things that I wanted them to see in the contract. I made sure that when these people knew I was coming out to their house, I'm listing it. Like, I'm not coming there to play games. And then your disclosure statements. So basically it's a nice bundled package and it's dropped off at their house or emailed, but I like a physical package better. And then that's in, all that stuff's in there.
Do you know what was the last one?
Disclosure statements. So your seller disclosure statements. Once the package is dropped off, now I'm gonna call back and confirm the appointment. So I'll say, hey, Eric, did you get that package of it? Yeah, we did. Okay, great. Did you read through it? Did you, have a chance to look at disclosures? I would say 1 time out of 15 appointments, I would get there and everything was filled out. That's a really great listing appointment. They have already hired me before I got to the door. Those were my favorite ones. They'd be like, here's all your paperwork, we filled it out. Oh, well, you're such a good student. Then you're gonna show up physically, emotionally, and mentally prepared, and it's showtime. So what I would do, because I was actually a pretty shy person, and for most of you that know me, and at 40, I never spoke on panels, I never spoke in public. It was a big fear of mine. I got over it 5 years later, but I had to think of myself as an actress playing the part of a top agent. What would a top agent look like, show up as? What kind of confidence would that top agent have? Because a lot of us go into these situations, and Kevin always says it, everyone's full of shit. Everybody. I don't care if you're a big CEO down to whoever. Everyone has insecurities. Everyone feels a little ooh at times. So you want to build yourself up and put on that superhero costume and this is showtime. And I've practiced this, and I've practiced my scripts, and I've chanted them, if you do the right kind of presentation, and now you're ready to go, it's showtime. So my coach would always say, if you think these 5 steps don't apply to you, your ego's in the way. Because you are thinking, oh, I do it better. I used to not do this for the first 7 years, and I used to have this. I would have about a 50% closing ratio on my appointments. After this, I had an 80% closing ratio. So it went up because my presentation started with the 5-step listing process. So you kind of want to create that pre-appointment routine. So it's getting your mindset in order, practicing the presentation, looking and dressing professionally, ensuring you have all the proper materials, and then being punctual or early. I would always leave a gap in time too, because we have traffic now. And so if you make appointments, you say, I'll be there at 3. Stop doing that, because usually we have issues. So just say, I'll be there between 3 and 3:15, depending on traffic. Or I'll be there between 3 and 3:30, depending on traffic. So that way you do give yourself buffer. But if you're naturally late, don't say that and always show up at 3:35. Give yourself the 3 o'clock punctual time, show up at the 3 o'clock time, but leave yourself a window, even if we were working with buyers, right? 3 to 3:15. So that way you're good. The other thing is getting better at your presentation. So how many of you use a true canned presentation? Like you learned a presentation, it's canned. Nobody?
Do you canned or does somebody else?
Like
my own can?
Well, I mean, I'm going to say you're all using a canned presentation. It's just how good does it work, right? I mean, I used a canned presentation. It was my own, but somebody else's canned presentation. None of you? A couple of you? What do you use? Where did you get yours from? Me? That's cool. You like it? Cool. I didn't get it. It's not mine. It's Mike Ferry's. Yeah, absolutely. But what's nice is when you record that presentation, the first time my coach told me to record my presentation and send it to him, and I had to listen to it, I wanted to throw up. I said, so many times, it was awful. And I was like, wow, I thought I was damn good. I sucked. So to listen to those little nuances, your inflections, where your upswings and your downswings are. Again, you're a football team, you're watching the tape. How did I throw that ball? Do I need to twist my hand just this much or this? That's how technical we can get when we're in a profession like this. So another point is, it's common to ask sellers why they didn't list with you, right? So you don't get the listing, well, why didn't you list with me? But I want you guys to start asking, why did you list with me? So that will build your confidence. Why did you give me the listing? Because again, you're analyzing. This is all EQ, self-reflection. At the end of the day, I like to self-reflect. What happened today? Who pissed me off? Who made me happy? Why did I get mad? Why am I happy? To just really assess your day. Knowledge equals confidence and ignorance equals fear. So sellers don't want to hire an unknowledgeable or unconfident agent. Confidence comes through with your knowledge. So that's why I love the canned presentation. If you guys decide to look at the one that we have or any others, there's tons of them out there. If you can like nail that presentation, you're gonna come off so confident in front of a seller, they're just gonna wanna hire you because they feel like you're gonna lead them. And sellers do wanna be led. If you go in there with a weak handshake and you're willy-nilly and you're kind of letting them guide you, I don't know about you, but I don't wanna hire that person. What is the point of paying me $10,000 or $15,000 if you're gonna lead this whole thing? I mean, you know better than me, so we may as well part ways. So they truly do want to be led. And if they feel like they can take advantage of you and they can lead you, they're going to. I mean, it's their house and a lot of people are control freaks. I'm one. You guys are control freaks. So they're definitely going to lead that way. Your first impression is critical. So of course, I used to be much more laid back with the things that I wore up in Michigan. We were all kind of laid back, chill. And then when I met Mike, he was like, no, you wear a suit. Like, I know you're a female, but you wear a suit or a really nice dress. I ramped up that game. I mean, you wouldn't catch me without a suit coat on. I mean, I was a weirdo, and I lived in North Carolina. It's hot. But I always had like a nice suit because, again, I wanted to stand out. If I'm gonna be interviewed by with three other people, and I show up really dressed well, and everybody else is very casual, I feel like that's a competitive edge. So that's a big one. All right, let's see what else. There is a direct correlation between knowing what to say and your ability to show up and do your job. So sellers buy that canned presentation because there's authority there. And then you've got to let your sellers know over and over and over again that you do not set the price, the market does. Because again, they're just so, they're so pushing towards that, like, oh, are you trying to get my attention? Oh, sorry. Okay. Next thing we're gonna go over, pricing property. So who has a listing right now that needs a price reduction? A lot of people. So tell me what your price reduction strategy is. Like, what do you feel, like when do you feel right now a property warrants a price reduction?
What warrants it?
Yeah, like when do you feel like, oh God, this thing's not moving? It's not enough eyes on the property. Low showings.
I have a formula.
You have a formula?
If it's 10 showings or 30 days. If it's under 10 showings or under 30 days, then I need a price. I'm sorry. If I've had 10 showings and no offer, or I've been on for 30 days and no offer, then it's time for an adjustment.
So you're a 30 days, 10 showings, no offers. Okay, Joe?
In Charlotte, if it hasn't sold in the second week, then we've got problems.
Yep.
Or an offer or feedback that we can take massive action on.
Yeah.
Then we got issues in 2 weeks.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm more of that mindset because the thing that I would tell my sellers is, hey, we have the most power. Mr. Seller, you have the most power on day 1, 2, and 3 of this deal, right? We brought the house to market. Everyone's racing to the property. The most ready, willing, and able buyers are at that property in the first few days of the listing. Why are they so important? Why are the first few buyers that see the house so important?
Excited about it.
Most ready to buy.
They're most ready to buy because they've done what? Research, looked at houses, lost houses. They are seasoned. And so that I always prep the seller. The seasoned buyers are the ones we want. Those first 5 people, they are the ones I care about. They've done their homework. They've taken their lumps. They've seen everything else that's out there. They're comparing us to everything they saw. So if they don't love us, I'm nervous. I'm really nervous. So if I say that to a seller and I future pace them for that, and then those 5 buyers show up and then they say, well, we found enough value to come look, but not enough to buy. Now I'm going, okay, we're in week 2 and week 3. Oh no, because as a buyer, when I pull up to a property that's been sitting for 30 days, am I like so excited I'm gonna think I'm in multiple offers? No, I'm going in with what attitude?
What can I get? How much can I get off of this?
How much can I get off of it? Why didn't this house sell? I smell blood in the water. Maybe we can get a good deal. You gotta future pace your sellers for that exact strategy, because if they think, we just need one buyer. We just need one buyer. Yeah, well, that buyer is not gonna come in at the price that you want, Mr. Seller, because that one buyer knows you've been sitting there for 60 days. So yes, it needs one buyer, but what type of buyer do we want? A ready, willing, motivated, excited, aggressive one? Or a buyer that's been just started looking, and they don't even know if your house is a good deal or not, because a buyer that just started looking, they enter the market and your listing sitting there for 30 days to 60 days. Now I'm gonna go look at that house, and it's the first one I see, and I go, well, I like it. I just don't know if it's a good deal. So I gotta look at what? More homes. Have we ever heard that? I just gotta see more homes, because they're just doing their research. I mean, they're just doing research. So for a seller, to me, I always use the 2-week rule, right? 2 weeks. If in 2 weeks, and I know it can fluctuate and people can change, and I know in the 3rd week, and everyone can prove this strategy wrong, there's always an instance that you can prove it wrong, but within 2 weeks on average, if a house is sitting and it hasn't sold, there is a problem with the price, or the condition, or the location. And how do we fix a location problem? Price. How do we fix the condition problem? Or we fix the condition. So I'm very much, and Sharon Evans is very big on this. I think you are too, Renee. Like, we like to prep the properties correctly and get the sellers to do the things they need to do. You guys have been in a market in the last 5 years where you really haven't had to do much. You kind of walk in, the house looks good, let's put a price on it, and we get multiple offers. Those days are gone. And so now it's like flooring, lighting, painting, right? I want to make sure my baseboards are clean. I mean, think about a used car. The lengths that we go to sell a used car. What does a seller do that's selling a car?
Oh, they get detailed.
Detailed, new smell tree, and right? I want to smell new, and it's 20 grand. But a $500,000 asset, they're like, do I have to paint? Well, I don't know. You should probably clean your cheesy feet off the carpet, you know? Like, come on, like, that's silly. So they have to have that mentality that this, and I use that a lot. When we sell a used car, what do? We detail it. We make sure we touch up the paint, even one little nick, right? You're going around with the little paint thing. So you got to prep these listings correct, and then the pricing will naturally follow. So price, location, and condition. Price fixes everything, but I'm really big on fixing the condition right now. You need me, Jenny? Oh, okay. Here. All right. So the sooner you price a home right, the faster it sells, the happier your business will be. So office statistics. This is another thing that you need to know as you're pricing property. I would have in front of me the last 30 days of activity. So every first of the month, I would look at the last 30 days and I would say, how many actives in the market? How many sold? How many went pending? And how many expired? Those are huge, huge, huge numbers to know, because as you're talking with sellers, it's like, you know, well, Mr. Seller, yeah, we could wait, but in the last 30 days, we had 400 homes that entered the market. We had 400 more people that are competing against us. So we've got to know those stats. Those stats will help you guys with price reductions. And the other thing that I did with pricing is every Friday we had a seller call. My sellers never get feedback right away. It's once a week they got feedback, because I would say, hey, I'm in the field, I'm gathering this feedback. We're going to have our Friday seller call. We're going to go through feedback. Why? Because I want to be in control of the feedback. Because why would I let an agent that showed up to my property for 5 minutes, who has never run comps, tell the seller it's overpriced? Or tell the seller it's priced just right, when I know it's not priced just right, because I went with the seller's price, and a lot of times we do that. So every Friday was a feedback call, and we would say, Mr. Seller, for the price, the buyer felt the backyard was too small. And the next feedback, Mr. Seller, for the price, the buyer felt that the home should have been painted and updated more. So everything is for the price, because remember, you could list, I mean, you could, because the sellers will say, well, you could just market it better. Well, if I take a $500,000 listing and I price it at $600, and I put it on every freeway, you know, billboard from here to Michigan, which is 750 miles, literally every billboard I buy, and it's $100,000 overpriced, who's going to buy it? Marketing doesn't matter. It truly doesn't matter. The price matters. Your number one marketing strategy is price it right. And so when you have a seller that's being bullish on that pricing strategy, you know, I would go back to them and say, hey, we listed at 500,000, it's not selling. If we listed the house at 600,000 and put it on every billboard across, you know, North Carolina, it still wouldn't sell because it's overpriced. But what if, Mr. Seller, we priced it at 400,000? What would happen? What would happen?
multiple.
What would a seller say if I asked them to drop their price 100 grand though?
Be like,
No, no, why would I wanna do that? Well, that would be crazy, Mr. Of course we wouldn't. If we dropped it 100 grand, you wouldn't need me. So that's a ridiculous thing. We don't wanna give your home away. If you're giving it away, I'll be the first to take it. But we do wanna find that balance. Between your price right now, you're the highest bidder. 500,000 is not working. We've been on 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. We've had umpteen showings. We've had no offers. So obviously the market's telling us we're priced too high. At 400,000, we're priced way too low. I get that. We don't want to give it away. But there's probably a price in the middle that's going to get you out of this asset, and the buyer is going to be excited about buying this asset, and it's probably somewhere around 450. Because these little tiny price reductions that y'all are doing, 5 grand, it's not working. That's like walking by a store and having a 10% off sale. I'm not stopping. 50% off, I'll be like, ooh, what do they got in it? Right? So you want to really have like bigger swings when you're doing a price reduction and make sure that that seller understands, oh, okay, that's going to move the needle. Does that make sense? Anything you want to add on pricing?
Not an objection.
Oh, good, good. Yeah, because we're at time. Go ahead.
The only thing I'd say to that is I'd be curious, like, obviously a lot of people do that to prioritize their search in Zillow.
Yeah.
If you do a 5,000 reduction, it ramps you back up to the.
It does, or $1 or whatever it is, yes.
Whatever.
Yeah. It does, it regenerates, but you can also do that with changing your showing comments sometimes. So every week, a little trick that I do with our listings, and I used to do it all the time, I probably got away from it. I would go in and change one word. And that just, unless you've turned that off for your buyer search, that keyword can regenerate and repopulate into a buyer search. So.
I'd be curious to know what the analytics are on, does Zillow know, what does that do to buyer feedback or
Activity.
buyer activity?
Yeah, yeah. Well, the thing is, like, I always think of it as, if I get all these showings, they're telling us what's happening. Because again, if you use the ridiculous close of like, well, if we lowered it 100,000, what would happen? Well, it would sell, exactly. I mean, unless you're $1 million and you're lowering it to 9 and it's really worth $850, that's not gonna work. But on a $500,000 house, a $100,000 swing is a lot. So typically on 500, if you've got 10 viewings that came through and no offers, that means they found enough value to look. That we're probably a 3% off. But if we had no showings, no offers, crickets for 2-3 weeks, we're probably 10% over market. I mean, and 10% is a lot, but that's really where we need to go to get ahead of where we are and kind of reset it all. Any other questions on pricing or process before we hand it over to Miss
How
Jessica?
do you explain, when you explain what the market shifts, right? Because we
Yeah.
have a shift, right? And you priced it somewhere, I mean, what are you gonna look at your seller when you need a price reduction for the shift?
So, again, we go into every conversation, we would be like, hey, Mrs. Seller, it's Tina, are you ready for our weekly call? Yes, okay, last week we had this many showings and this many offers. What the market is telling us is that we have enough value that buyers will still show up. We had 10 showings, but they're just not there to buy. So what that traditionally shows us in an average, is we sell 80 homes a month, so we have the numbers, is we're probably off by 3 to 4, maybe even 5%. And so then I would give them the number. That means we should be at 400 and whatever thousand. What is your feeling about, adjusting and repositioning the asset to that value today? It's repositioning the asset, not lowering the price. So we got to change our words with them because they're like, I don't want to lower the price. They're already spending the money at the 500. And so it's just, we need to reposition, because my feeling is, and I've seen this before, again, you're an advisor, we have to have hard conversations with them. I'd rather tell them the truth than have them be mad at me. My feeling is if we don't do this today, we're going to have another week go by with crickets or low amount of showings, and then we're going to have to be doing bigger swings to get this house back to market value. So we have to readjust, reposition it to win. And then I would even bring all of the homes that sold in the time that they were active. So that's a good strategy. Here are the ones that sold. Let's dissect these. Why do you think this one sold versus ours? Let them tell you. Oh, this one had a pool. Oh, they had a pool and they were listed at 500 too, and we're at 500, we have no pool. That'll be a comp for us. This one sold because it had a yard twice the size as, you know, so they really have to get to that understanding. But I was very forward with them and moving them along really quickly. So I knew that I was gonna do the seller a disservice to let it sit as a strategy of let's hope and see.
What are, other than simply saying, I don't want to sell it unless it's this price, what are other things that sellers will tell you that will either make you cancel the listing appointment, or you try to get the appointment when you're cold call?
I don't mind, so the question was if they say, well, I just only want to list at this price, and you know in your gut,
That's one of them, or anything
one of
else that they
yeah.
tell you.
what would make me cancel an
Yeah,
appointment? So my rule was, let's see if I can get this right, high motivation, high price, I'm going on the appointment.
Okay.
Because they have to go. So their price might be unrealistic, but my job is to get them into reality. Low motivation, right price, I'm going, right? So low motivation, but a good price, still there. Low motivation, high price, bye-bye. Like there's no, they want this crazy number, they want $1 million, and I know it's 750, and they have no motivation. There's no external pressure for them to sell. Why are we doing, I just wanna see what I can get. Well, that says to me, I'm about to spend $2,500 in my own money and end up doing this with a seller, right? Constantly this. I don't wanna do that. I wanna just have a great conversation. So I would always say, look, I'm not gonna be the cheapest agent, so a lot of times they would call me back and say, we really liked you, but you had the worst price. And I would say, well, it's up to you. Do you want me to tell you the other price and you can hire me at this price? But then in 2 weeks we'll reduce because it sounds like price is the only thing, but you feel more comfortable with me. And so they would go, well, yeah, we would list it at this price, but, you know, so we'd have to have that negotiation. Because the easiest thing for me to do is say, fine, let's list it at that price, I'm desperate. I just want to say I have a listing. Well, that, you sell it and then it's worth it. So, and I would cancel listings, if you get a seller that you take on and maybe you think it's the right price and it's just not selling and they're getting really tough to deal with or they're attacking you in a certain way, if they're not following the path of reduction, then I would just give the listing back. I would say, you know, it's probably better to just give the listing back at this point. I don't feel comfortable pushing you to a number that you're just not comfortable with, but I am really comfortable reading the market and it's just not going to sell. So instead of letting your home sit and gain a reputation, I would rather just let's pause and reassess. And a lot of times that would scoot them into the right price or they would start listening because you're like, it's like the takeaway with your kid, you know? So.
I often, in my market with military communities, sometimes they have to move quicker than, like they haven't even been there for 2 years, or they just get another job. And so they're trying to break even. And, you know, with the commissions and everything like that, they're gonna bring money to the table. So they want to shoot for that higher price, of course, to try to clear. At least just wanna break even. I don't wanna bring a dollar to closing. Sometimes that's the harsh reality of it, but from a marketing standpoint and trying to convince them, like, sorry, like this isn't, like you can't go 20, I mean, you didn't get that much equity in 1 year, but, or just 2, so I don't really know how to navigate that. I come across it often in the market.
Yeah, I mean, Eric, you've been in this, I mean, how many times did sellers have to bring money to the table?
Oh, ton.
Almost every time.
Almost every time.
And they do, but,
And then they gotta remember, because they got into it with no money. So
Exactly.
on the back end, you
yeah,
have to
that's a
bring
good
money.
point.
So that's what I always tell them every time.
Yeah, and the other thing is this, there is, and I would say this to sellers because it's true for me, I have never met a seller that's lost money on a home they've kept for a decade. Never. But when you go into a market and you're transient and you move here to here to here every 2 years, I'm sorry, you're playing with the dice, right?
Yeah.
Like sometimes you're taking a risk. There's no guarantee you hold an asset and it makes money. We've been spoiled.
Right.
But, and so that, and then the other thing would be to the house they buy. Can you renegotiate $10,000, $15,000 off the house you buy? Maybe you can get a better deal on the next side
Right.
and maybe focus them on that.
But there's a difference between an objection and condition.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just a condition.
Yeah.
It's not an objection, you can't
Right.
do anything about it, that's the
Correct,
market.
correct.
So it is understanding what's the difference between, is this a real thing that you can handle, or this is just reality?
Because nobody wants to update their home. Nobody wants to paint and carpet and that, I mean, that, it's just is what it is. It's an objection, not a condition, because a lot of them do have the money.
Right.
They just don't want to spend it.
So here's the thing that I will say on that.
Oh, sorry.
I was gonna say to that point, I just went on a listing appointment last week and I had to tell the seller, hey, best case scenario, you have to bring 35,000 at closing.
Okay, so ours is.
And guess what, like having that conversation is tough. However, future pacing it and sticking it to the script, and okay, here are the numbers. What do you see as the value? Okay, great, what is this? She arrived at the value so that by the time the seller net sheet came out, she was just like, I'm just so happy that we're not looking at 50 right now.
Right.
But because she realized, like, I didn't tell her what the price was, like, she
Right.
came up with it on her own. But that conversation is definitely uncomfortable, especially if you're like, hey, isn't this a great amount of money? But if you get them to understand the price themselves, like, hey, do you understand where you fall with this? Like, what price do you think it is? And then let them tell you 20,000, okay, great, so before we go any further, where is the 20,000 difference between these? Like, explain to me a little bit more about what makes yours $20,000 more, so that they come up with the price that by the time you get to, here's what's happening at closing, it's not a surprise.
Right.
That's the only thing,
Yeah.
but
And that's
those
what we're saying,
conversations
the
aren't
script-
fun.
The script, the listing presentation, which we have 20 minutes, Tina, Tina turns from 2 to 3. But if you want to.
Oh, we were removing it to get everybody out a little bit
Okay.
earlier, yeah.
But the actual listing presentation is questions, and you're getting them to say, do you see this house is a little bit better than yours? So it's, you're asking them, let them come to this conclusion, exactly what she's saying, instead of saying, I'm not saying anything. This is what we're seeing on the market, what do you think? And then you're letting them come to that conclusion by themselves. Yeah, they still might be mad about it, but I wanna go to the moon, but sometimes.
That's gonna be more common, you guys.
Yeah.
Like, we're gonna have more and more sellers that are gonna need to bring money to the table.
Yeah.
Because of what they paid in the last 3 years.
When that's happening,
Where they can listen
with
to rent.
buyers of mine that will like to sell for them later, I remind them, you know, you looked at rentals, those would be $2,500 a month, so that would have been $30,000, that just is bye-bye $30,000.
Exactly.
You had to increase the odds that you might make money, or if you break even, or you lose 10, you're still coming out ahead.
Correct. I agree. And again, I would stress that this is gonna happen more and more, so we have to have those conversations. The other thing I would say too, on price reductions, I would rather you guys turn down the first price reduction that you didn't get at your price than take it, because the second one is harder to get. The first one is, like, you wanna make it count. So first price reduction, better count. The second price reduction is harder. So if they say, if you're like, we gotta lower this thing 20 grand, and they're like, I wanna do it 5. Sorry, Charlie, like, we'll just, if you're not comfortable yet, let's just leave it where it's at for another week and revisit this conversation, because I know this 5,000 is not gonna do what we need it to do. So if you're really uncomfortable, we'll wait, even though time is the killer of all, sellers, you're giving up your control. The more time that ticks by, you're giving the power to the buyer. I mean, that's a strategy. We're using it right now. So yeah, your second one's gonna be harder. So I would turn down the first price reduction, if that makes sense. Yeah.
And we're gonna give you a script.
We're gonna stick it in access, yeah, for our access people, so. Yes, and our registered people, yes. So any other questions before we stump what did we call this?
It's not stump the chump, not that.
Stump Jessica.